So, it's the end of yet another week, and here on this channel, that means one thing and one thing only. Every weekend, I post an episode of this series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week based on what's going on at the time, and I then choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week has admittedly been a bit slow in the NBA world, as Summer League basketball is over, and the free agency and trade front has cooled off pretty hard since the start of July, but rumors are still floating around, and moves are coming on the horizon, so of course we still have plenty to discuss. In order to submit your takes, I make a community post on either the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you see on your screen now, so if you want a chance to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Mythologist, and he says that the Lakers are going to end up having to run it back with mostly the same core of players from last year, and as a result, are about to experience an even worse season than last year. The Lakers will always naturally find themselves in headlines because of the stature of their franchise, the fact that LeBron James plays for them, and the fact that they're coming off of a historically disappointing season. But after being linked to quite a few of the biggest names available on the market this summer, they have yet to execute on any notable moves. One of the biggest issues with last year's Lakers squad was how a large majority of their main contributors were getting up there in age and were all way past their primes, except for Malik Monk, who happened to leave them for Sacramento in free agency this summer. What I actually liked from the Lakers this offseason though, is that they prioritized signing players that are actually on the younger side, in the sense that they're entering the best years now. Thomas Bryant is a productive interior player who finishes well around the basket and works hard on the glass. Lonnie Walker has steadily improved as a scorer every season he's been in the league, and can step into the void left behind by Monk, and players like Damian Jones and Juan Toscano Anderson are decent depth pieces at the big men spots. Ultimately though, what will determine the success of the Lakers this year is how the Russell Westbrook saga plays out, and whether or not Anthony Davis can get back to 100% health. New Lakers coach Darwin Ham has spoken very highly of Westbrook and how he plans to use him to the best of his abilities, but Russ's former manager has come out and said that Westbrook is unhappy in Los Angeles and he wants out. That kind of tension could lead to another disappointing year in LA, but we'll just have to wait and see. The next take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Bruh, and he says that the lack of moves by the Miami Heat this offseason will result in them declining in the East this upcoming year. So, the Heat are coming off of a pretty successful season where they finished with the best record in the conference, in the regular season at least, and then came one game away from an NBA Finals berth in the conference finals. As currently constructed, they are objectively a really good team, and you could argue that they didn't need to do that much to step forward next year, but the issue is that, as the take states, they really didn't do anything at all except lose valuable contributor PJ Tucker. And with many other teams in the East getting aggressive around them, it's not unlikely they do end up getting passed up. You may not think of PJ Tucker as a massive loss, however, as a role player, he's the exact type of scrappy guy willing to do the little things that elevate every team that he's been on. It's not a coincidence that the Houston Rockets were always one of the biggest threats to the Warriors during his time there, then he went to the Milwaukee Bucks and helped them win a ring, then he went to Miami last season and helped elevate them to being the 1 seed. Losing him to an in-conference rival will hurt whether you want to admit it or not. Jimmy Butler is good enough and has proven he elevates his play in the postseason, but the rest of the Heat roster is filled with quite a few question marks. Tyler Hero shrunk in big moments last year, Bam Adebayo is elite defensively but shrinks offensively at times too, and Kyle Lowry continues to decline as he gets up there in age. I still wouldn't count the Heat out from being a top 4 team in the East, but I do definitely see a path for them to have a disappointing season if things stay as is. The next take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Brand, and they say that the Sixers are stuck in purgatory because they're not good enough to win anything in a stacked Eastern Conference. The Sixers have notably not gotten out of the second round in the playoffs during Joel Embiid's time there. However, calling that purgatory is just simply a massive overreaction and honestly a pretty lazy piece of analysis for their situation. Teams that get classified as the ones that are stuck in purgatory tend to be the ones with middling talent, good enough to maybe be a 7 or 8 seed without any real hope. The Sixers are not that by any means. When competing for titles, you typically need an MVP candidate, which Joel Embiid is, you need a secondary star to help out, which James Harden still absolutely is, and then surrounding them, you need quality depth pieces to play their roles. For the longest time, the Sixers' biggest issue has been their depth, as the minutes that Embiid has gone to the bench historically have resulted in some collapses, and most metrics backed that up. Now, however, steps are being made in the right direction. Tyrese Maxey is emerging as a potential star in the making as a young, energetic guard coming off of a year where he averaged a highly efficient 18 points. Tobias Harris can be a very productive fourth option when fully bought into that role, and the Sixers have, for the first time in a while, added some bench depth pieces that should help them in the long run. As I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Miami Heat, PJ Tucker has been one of the most ideal role players in the league for years, and the Sixers brought him in to do what he does best, which is play tough defense, crash the glass, space the floor with his shooting, and compete harder than his matchup. Then, Daniel House was one of the Jazz's best perimeter defenders last season, and can also be used as a spot-up shooter who the Sixers signed as well, and also, D'Anthony Melton, who they traded for, is an outstanding 3-and-D guard that helped the Memphis Grizzlies a ton during the Ja Morant era. The Sixers may not be the favorites to win the title by any means right now, but saying that they're stuck in purgatory is just lazy and wrong. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Elix, and he says, well, a lot, but to summarize, his point is that the Kings are about to take the leap and end their playoff drought this year because of the strong offseason that they had. I can definitely admit that the Kings have done a lot of good this summer. Bringing in Malik Monk coming off of the best season he's had as a pro is a nice boost. Kevin Huerter is yet another wing scorer to throw into the mix for them that they brought in, and drafting Keegan Murray looks like a huge success early on, as he will be someone ready to contribute immediately from day one. Add in De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, and they have a lot of firepower on offense, which will definitely not be an easy thing for opponents to slow down. The issue with the team last year that I'm not convinced will change much though is the defensive side of the ball. The Kings were the 4th worst defense in the NBA last year, and none of the additions that I just named are necessarily very good defenders to fix that. Keegan Murray projects as a good defender down the line throughout his career, but rookies rarely ever produce a level of defensive impact from day one. I'm a believer in the Kings having a highly touted offense for sure, and that could end up being enough to get them into the playoffs, but their defense leaves a lot to be desired, which is why I disagree with the original take saying that they'll end up as a top 6 seed in the playoffs, when the more likely outcome for them is ending up in the play-in tournament. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the takes we discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.